Hello and welcome back to the Jerusalem Post. I'm your host, Tamar Uriel-Biri, and I'm joined today by Dr. Ronen Berger and Tamar Levi. Dr. Ronen Berger is a drama therapist and senior lecturer at Ono Academic College with particular expertise in therapy and group work based on art and nature therapy relating to trauma and resilience. He has been leading the Youth Resilience Program in the Community Stress Prevention Center of Israel. Dr. Tamar Levi is an educational psychologist and head of the Knowledge Development Department at NATA, the Israel Trauma and Resilience Center. Doctors Berger and Levi, thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure.
We have a very interesting discussion ahead of us to discuss really the situation of trauma that Israel is currently in the process of developing, right? So Tamar, I'd like to start with you. There's trauma and there's post-trauma. And now everybody's saying we're actually still in the trauma stage. What does that mean?
It means that the trauma is ongoing. It means that the threat is still out there. It's real. And that unlike the term that we all know, post-traumatic stress disorder, where the event and the threat are located chronically in the past and the present is relatively safe, it's difficult to say this at these moments because the threat is either still here or awaiting beyond the corner. It depends, obviously. Not all Israel is threatened in the same manner, but for each individual, for each community, that would be the essence of the ongoing threat.
So how does that, this is a question for both of you guys, how does that affect treatment?
I think first, how does it affect the symptoms? How does it affect the phenomenology of what we see? How does it affect the mind and the psyche? So this is a time where our mind is captive, and I intentionally using this word, is captive by a sense of a threat. And when we're threatened, we act, we think, our conceptual system works differently than in times of relaxation. So, and I think the first thing for me as a psychologist is when I look and try to identify and diagnose if a person is suffering from PTSD or not, I can't use the same system, the same diagnostic system that I use when the trauma is beyond us, because there are many behaviors, many emotions that are suitable for times when threat exists outside, and they would be normative rather than times when it's relaxed outside, and then these behaviors would be considered, once again, considered pathological. So it's that would be the first thing, my approach. When I approach trauma, when it's ongoing trauma, I don't expect people to relax. If they relax, they feel they give away a presence of a feeling that is very important for their survival. Being alert, being in a sense of alertness can save lives. If I have 10 to 15 seconds to run to a shelter, then being very alert, if I could sense the little sounds, the little signs that come before these alerts. I don't know if you know, but in Sderot, everybody knows that before an alert, all the birds from all the trees fly away. So if I'm alert to the signs of the birds, to the signs of the dogs, I actually gain 2 or 3 more seconds, which is a lot. And you have 15 seconds in the paper, that's what's written, but actually it's a lot less. So I can't ask people to give up their alertness. It's essential for their survival. They won't cooperate with such a request. And on the other hand, when people are alert all the time, it has a toll on the body and on the mind. And it erodes the body and the mind.
So we become more burned out and more wear out, and like it's like ongoing stress day by day, week by week, month by month. And it also, to add to what your question, first of all, it's a collective trauma. It's not like we are used to dealing with individual or family or even small communities. It's a collective trauma. So all of us in the same boat, and we echo each other. And the TV and the media and the social media makes it even stronger. And also we're dealing with loss and grief. So it's a combination of the issue of trauma and being, as Tamar said, feeling stress and being alert, and also dealing with grief, with sorrow, with loss of belief system has been damaged. We go through grief. All of us know different people in different, like from some of us which are close, and know people which are close to us who died or lost their homes, or even if we don't know someone on the first occasion, we are part of this society. So it's a combination of collective trauma and collective grief.
I think maybe we can add to your proposition of the collective grief. Also, it's a very unique type of collective grief trauma. It's a national trauma. It's a term that actually Natal's acronyms are נפגעי טראומה לאומית, National Trauma and Resilience Center in Israel. And I think that a national trauma has a very unique, it's positioned in a very unique realm in between the private and the universal.
So let's take a step back. What does national trauma mean in its base?
Once again, it's a collective trauma, as Ronnie has mentioned, but it's a unique type of collective trauma. And I'm not sure that there's too much written about it because it was coined in Israel. Natal has coined this term. It connects between the threat of the event and our group identity. It connects between the mental distress and our national and this identity. So it adds to the trauma and to the distress questions of nationality. And it combines between people who feel belonging to the same nation, but it is also socially used to draw some social borders. It could combine people in one collective, and they may see themselves as part of the event, part of the collective group. But it also splits between collectives.
I'm curious how, I guess, because I really want to understand treatment mid-trauma, right? Because it can't be the same as post-trauma because of what you said, because the person is experiencing something entirely different to what post-trauma is. They're still in the midst of, so that's another question. I'm totally a mess right now, but my follow-up to before was, does that alertness that you were discussing relate to fight or flight? That's like an expression that everybody hears all the time, that like the body's ready to go. Is that what that is?
Yes, in a sense. And as I said, there's an allostatic toll to this because when you're permanently, our body is like a sling. So we know to stress and release. But when we are stressed we're constantly stressed, then the body begins to pay a toll. All the systems in the body begin to pay a toll. And yet we can't really relax because it's existential for us. The alertness is existential for us. I think I'm taking this back to think a little bit about the trauma of October 7th and 8 months passing. The current trauma has also has a big effect on shattering some assumptions that are very basic to our views, the self and the world. People are born and with some assumptions that are the basis of their conceptual system. They develop in very early interactions of the human development. And 3 of these basic assumptions are, one is the benevolence of the world being a good place all in all, people being good, being a just world, people behaving mutually, especially good is mutual, and those who need to take care of and protect us would do so. So this is one basic assumption. The second assumption is the sense of a world as a meaningful place. It means that things happen for a reason. There's some kind of a justice system. There's some kind of a truth that leads us. And there's sense in the world. Things happen because of a reason. And that gives us a sense of predictability. When we lose this, we lose a sense of predictability and we lose control. If we can't predict what we do, then there's nothing we can do. We don't even know where it is safe and where it is risky. Where should we be? In the house, in the shelter? We're supposed to be safe there. And so on. And the third basic assumption is an assumption of a self-worth. It means that my existence means something to someone. Somebody loves me in some sense. There's basic humanism in this belief, a basic sense of dignity to my existence. And I think that we're facing a situation where these basic assumptions are shattered. They're shattered in every trauma, but when they're shattered in such a amount and such
it's explosive. It feels like it's explosive.
Yes. And to that we add our collective conceptions. This is when I think things begin to be very complicated.
I want to connect that back. Ronen, you've kind of invented this method of nature therapy. And I'm curious, first of all, I'd love for you to tell our audience what that is. But also I'm curious how that treatment method connects, on the other hand, with what Tamar just described, this like really unique breaking of faith.
So first of all, nature therapy is a method, therapeutic method. We work in nature in creative ways, and we address or use nature as a partner in the process. So, for example, I'm an art therapist. So if as an art therapist, I would bring like a bag with colors and paints and all these kind of, or masks or all kinds of equipment. So in nature therapy, we work much more with what we find in the here and now. It can be like materials. So we create our artwork from mud or from trees or from whatever. So we use what we have, but we also address the changes that nature brings as offerings. And this relates to the issue of trauma and stress. For example, if you will work on the beach and we build a sand castle or something, which represents something, and then a wave comes and takes this castle, the wave, nature, will introduce the idea of change, introduce of loss, introduce of, maybe it's expected actually that if we build a castle near the water might take it. So nature will bring, we can go for a walk and meet a dead bird, right? Every day there is a sunset and sunrise and sunset, high tide and low tide, yeah? So nature brings this kind of dialogue, natural dialogue about the issue of beginning and ends, about the issues of control, about the ability to predict. Yeah, Tamar talked about the importance of predicting.
Usually, different forms of therapy, the person has some sort of control over what's happening.
Right.
Nature, even if you, I don't know, want the wave to behave in a certain way to teach change, like from the therapist's point of view, you don't know that it's necessarily going to do that. So how do you nevertheless
So we address this as part of, we have one of the terms in nature therapy, it's called the three-way relationship. So it's client, nature, and therapist. So I would address nature as a co-therapist. So if nature will introduce a specific event, like for example, a dead bird, and my client will relate to this dead bird, I can say, oh, now nature messed up my plan, it destroyed my setting, or I don't like it. But I would try to relate to these offerings of nature as kind of interventions that we can relate to. Of course, we do keep a safe setting. We have a group, we have a time frame, there is a therapeutic contract, we build relationship, we build trust. So the client or the nature therapy is very much group oriented. So the group is the container of the process and the therapist, and we have a contract. Yes, so there is a sense of safety, but at the same time, we are much more open to meet the changes. Like as an art therapist, for example, if you work with clay and we create something in the studio with clay, we can come in the next week and the clay can be dry. So it will have some fragments, it can break. So also the art form will change, but still it's much more controllable than outside.
I do want to get back to art therapy soon, and we will touch on that a little bit because you are also are an art therapist. But I want to touch back onto what Tamar was saying earlier, right? She was talking about this faith in humanity, faith in goodness that kind of in these kinds of national crises are thrown into question. How does
Well, first of all, I would say,
therapy...
if we relate to your previous question, what do we do right now? Because as Tamar saying, we cannot work now with post-trauma because we cannot identify who is post-traumatic and we're still not there. So what we want to do right now is, first of all, to help people and communities. I think the community aspect is very, very strong. And we do it very much in Mashabim. And the programs I'm running are all community and group oriented, is help people and communities regain and build their coping mechanisms to gain more strength. And the strengths mean developing the connection with the imagination, because the imagination is the ability to reinvent my reality. Yeah, my life was broken. I can invent a different reality, to strengthen the community, the social bond, so I can feel more safe to ask help and to give help, so I don't feel alone. Yes, to work on more the connection to the body, so I can ease the tension, I can release the tension. Yeah, because as Tamar said, the tension is, first of all, it's anchored in the body. So we feel it in the body. So how we can release this physical tension, to work on the cognitive aspect, because when we're more stressed, it also has cognitive impact. And there is also the issue, of course, of the belief system, which was also shattered. Did I forget something from the basic pH? I think I did everything. Because the symptoms will and can be shown in any one of these aspects: the physical, the cognition, the social, the emotional. I forgot the emotional and the imagination. So you want to strengthen all of them. So the idea is, the more coping mechanisms people have, there is less a chance they'll develop PTSD.
Do you guys see therapy as both treatment and preventative preparation of sorts?
I think that working in community, and both Mashabim and Natal work within the community, we always have a perspective of prevention. So it could be, Natal works all year long. So we work during times of tranquility. We work in times of, we prepare for emergency. And preparing is on all levels. It's on the individual level, it's on a group level, a community, organizational level. And preparing is, you can prepare your books and your to-dos for emergency, and you can also prepare yourself and your body, as Ronen has explained, on all levels. As you say, you can't start breathing and releasing tension when tension is here. You have to know how to do it. You have to be acquainted with the methods of stress release, and it's also we also work during emergency. So at 6:30 a.m. Back Saturday, October 7th, our emergency lines were open, and we received telephone calls from people within their rooms, people whispering from their under the beds and in hiding places. We were in the midst of the emergency. And the weeks following, we had done the immediate interventions, emergency interventions, once again, on all levels, individual and groups. But I do think that, so in every level, there is a preventative sense. The preventative aspect is, once it's for the individual, so each individual will not develop what would become and crystallize into PTSD, which is a stable and chronic state. But we also want to prevent the distress from metastasizing to society. If think of the captives, when they return to their families. So their stress or their distress, and if they do develop PTSD, it would metastasize to their families, to their friends. We had captives coming back into classes, children coming back into classes. So we had to intervene within classes. We had to, I think the...
So can you explain what you mean by intervention? What does that mean in this context?
It's an important question, and it's also important because, as we said, we're working with national trauma. In national trauma, sometimes working with the individual alone is important, but it wouldn't be enough. The trauma has hurt the whole community, and in this case, the whole nation. And we always work in trauma in the realm where it hurt, where it caught us. So if it's a very individual event or trauma, then we work with the individual. But when it's a social event, we work in the social realm. And if there's a sense of betrayal, if the trauma is also a trauma of betrayal, we try to work into regaining or rebuilding the sense of trust and safety and goodness. And this is exactly what we met in October 7th. We met sheer evil. We felt betrayed. And this is what we're trying to work on. So when we intervene, we intervene in all levels. In Natal, we work individually, and we have therapists working individually, but we also know how to work with organizations. We try to combine with the natural leaders of the community and to work with them. So in all Israel, and I'm sure Ronnie can elaborate later, but in all Israel, the kibbutzim were evacuated, and they tried to evacuate as communities. And some of the kibbutzim are hosted by communities. So I think it's a wonderful thing to see in Israeli society, how one kibbutz hosts and takes care of another community of a kibbutz that was shattered. And then we would work with the kibbutz on the ways that we can reconnect the members to one another. If an individual returns from captivity, we would put someone to help that individual. And it's not only Natal, of course, it's many, many others who do so, but we would also see the larger picture and say, the captive individual is a part of a bigger story because he's coming back into a class. So I have to prepare his classmates. I have to prepare his teacher. I have to prepare the parents of his classmates, because one parent of a child who wasn't captive and is in the class is very anxious of what his kid can hear from the child coming back from captivity.
So and is it just telling them what they have experienced? Do you bring somebody that they can answer questions for the child?
Each preparation is done differently, but I'm just, for you to imagine, for a class, one child, we're happy you came back, but don't come and visit us afternoon because I don't want my child to hear. Of course, I'm making a very dark and clear picture of it, and it's not, but the sense for a community, when one member comes back and another member doesn't come back, it's a very complicated event for a community. And one of the interventions would be how to keep this community as a whole, and how one community can hold both feelings, very extreme, very different, and very conflicting feelings, and not be torn apart. So I think that would be the main intervention in a collective, a communal sense.
I think maybe the term of therapy gets many more meanings, and it's not, I mean, the meaning of doing like what we call in Hebrew chosen, developing coping mechanisms.
Resilience, yes.
Yeah, resilience is not, I mean, when we talk about therapy or psychology, we work a lot with the issue of processing, understanding. Yeah, when we do resilience work, we want to develop, I think, first of all, abilities. How do you cope? What do you do? When you feel stress in your body, what do you do? When you feel fear, how do you help yourself? How do you help others? So it's not like in conventional therapy, a lot about processing. But it's also about how do you feel you're part of a community? How do you build bridges between people? Yes, it's a lot about developing skills. Like we have, like in Mashabrim, we have four programs. It operates in schools, in kindergarten. So we come for the whole group because it's a group issue, just as Tamar said. Yes, this group has people who've been evacuated from kibbutzim, maybe have children whose parents or father is now in Gaza. It has all these different dimensions, yeah, but it's a group. So if the group as a whole feels safe, if the group as a whole can shake their bodies when they feel stress, if they can draw a picture of their strength or healing metaphors, yeah? So we're really trying to work in a collective. We work with the school teacher or the kindergarten teacher. We don't come as experts and go away because the community, yeah, school, class, kindergarten is a community of children, of parents, yeah? So we work, I think one of the things which has been very much emphasized, and also the slogan of the war is together ננצח, ביחד ננצח. The issue of the community,
yes.
Yeah, the group became much more strong, the community. I need to say that today there are not really protocols of dealing with PTSD in collective and group work. Most of the treatments in PTSD are individual, and these protocols need to be developed because we don't have enough therapists to work with so many people who have and will have PTSD. So the techniques of working and using the group and community needs to be further developed.
I do want to turn it though, like exactly what you're describing. I do want to turn it though from looking at the people being treated to those who are treating. I know that for me at least, it would be too big a burden. I don't think that I would personally be able to handle taking on treating people who have experienced such acute terrors, such as former hostages, such as even those just living along the southern and northern borders who are, under rocket fires and have been evacuated from their homes. It's an immense, 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 terrible thing that's happened to them, and they're still, as you said, experiencing that trauma as it's ongoing. As well, those who witnessed the Nova Music Festival massacre, the survivors there. It's a lot to put on the shoulders of mental health workers. I'm curious what's done for them. What does that look like in the field? The questions for both of you.
I would say that it's not just being exposed as secondarily being exposed. And we do know that trauma is contagious, as I said before. And there's a term for coined by Professor Figley, there's secondary traumatic stress. And Figley keeps saying that it's a disease that happens to therapists and mental health workers who do their work, who do well, who are doing their work in most honest and mesirut manners. So
completely dedicated.
Yeah, when dedicated and professional. So there's no way you cannot be contagious. There are ways that you can use this contagion to combine and to understand the patient. But I think the situation here, October 7th trauma is a very complicated trauma. It's a layered trauma. It's not only one trauma. And the situation here is not that we are only secondarily contagious by trauma. We are victims of this trauma as well. And therapists live in the South.
We're part of this.
Therapists were murdered. Therapists experience grief, traumatic grief. Therapists have children in the army. Therapists have their houses and homes shattered. Therapists and patients together sit in a clinic when there's a siren and need to go to the shelter, to the mamad, etc., etc. And therapists also feel in some level, in another level, therapists in Israel are part of the Israel nationality and feel a sense of identification. And they also feel or experience whatever it is that the consequences of a national trauma would be. So in this essence, awareness is the first thing a therapist has to be aware of these problems. And then once again, I think the answer is the collective work that we do.
The support,
I
the
think,
group support we get.
yeah, and support, obviously supervision.
Very
and,
important.
Ronen's work is super essential for therapists as well. We need supervision, we need group work, we need to maintain and self-care.
That's interesting, actually. Ronen, are there groups of nature therapy for therapists?
First of all, I can share my own story that I live in Kibbutz Nir, which is on the border near Lebanon, Kiryat Shmona. We were evacuated from the 10th of October. And my children are spread out in the country, and I travel between Europe and Greece and Israel. And first of all, I can tell you that personally, the work, I mean, I'm working like probably Tamar also like around the clock, like it's really crazy, but it gives me a lot of meaning. And the work, and I hear from a lot of colleagues that we work like hectically, but the meaning we get and the feeling of probably control and contribution we get feeds us back. And it gives, I mean, I'm telling about myself, it really strengthened my sense of belonging, my sense of being, I wrote, it's crazy, like I wrote 5 books about this issue in 5 months. It's just energy I get from the thing. It gives me motivation and a sense of just do something, just help. And I think for many therapists, this idea of feeling meaningful and impacting, it goes back to the issue of values Tamar talked about, the issue of, yeah, I think it's very important. I think I hope that all of us, our therapists, are equipped with how do you deal with your own stress? How do you ask for help? At the same time, I think there is a lot of burnout. I probably, we don't feel it yet. Probably now we're still in this mood of
Adrenaline.
Yes, it will probably ease, and we will have, like Tamar said, traumatization mishnit, secondary trauma, will be more and more present.
It's not only
Personally,
secondary, it's firstly.
yes, it's all exactly, yeah.
It's
Yes,
primary.
I just wanted to say, like, how can you be a parent? Like, I'm thinking, like, how can you have a child now in Gaza, and how can you really be free for hearing another parent or a soldier who just, I mean, we're very, very close. We don't, part of what we do in therapy is we develop with time, we learn how to create some kind of distance from our clients. And I think this event really shook a lot of basic foundations of what is therapy, what we're like, I feel we're inventing, we're researching, we're inventing, we're exploring. What does it mean to work in this situation of collective trauma? Now in Ono, we're going to start next year the first actually training in a BA system, in a BA program, which will train, we call it something like מדריך חוסן באמצעות משחק ויצירה, using play, using play, and art to develop resilience. It's not therapy.
This is at Ono Academic College.
Yeah, we're going to start next year in the BA in Madait Nagut, a new program, which will, it's a big program. It's a 3 years program, full day a week around this issue. So yeah, how can we promote resilience? It's not therapy. We're not working on exactly what Tamar said. We're not working with the trauma. We're working with helping people to connect to their strengths, to find creative ways to express what they feel, to gain collective support, to all the things we spoke before. So I think this is a big challenge. I think the education system in Israel needs to wake up today, especially in the school systems. And the older we get and we got close to the מבחני בגרות, we have less and less resilience work. We need to develop more creative ways of teaching. In the programs I run in Mashabim, we can hear more and more that we're the only when we come, it's allowed to talk about stress, to talk about fear, to talk about grief. Yeah, the education system needs to go through a very big change. Unfortunately, this situation in Israel, it's going to last. I mean, even if the war ends tomorrow, we're going to have like effects.
That's a very important point, because after the war, I just add to the resilience point, but after the war, we see a lot eruption of a lot of symptoms, violence, rage, premature deaths.
Just like during the pandemic.
That's correct. And we did, it's another
Worse.
issue to think about that, how we came into this, how we came into this event. But I would like to add in the topic of a shared, we call it shared traumatic situations, when we work and we are the victims, because we live in our communities, we're the victims of the same communities. We feel that in Natal, we have about 400 therapists. Some of them are evacuated, as Ronen is. The head of the clinical unit is also evacuated, and she had to manage a unit of that grew from 300 patients to 2,000. So just think about how you manage a thing like that when your children, as Ronen said, are scattered around in different homes and places and houses. I think that regarding the shared traumatic stress, it does contage, it does take a toll, but it also has a very unique gift. Boulanger, a psychoanalyst who works a lot about shared traumatic stress, says that while we fear that our privacy, maybe our humanity, it will be opened up to our patients, and then it might do something to therapy, prevent erupt therapy, because they might want to protect us. Patients call us on phone to see if we're okay when they know that the areas we live in are bombarded. And
that's problematic when it comes to the detachment that it's expected for therapists, right?
And right, yes. Traditionally, yes. But what Boulanger says,
now.
Yes, it is changing. And yet again, there's always there's an asymmetrical relationship, and that would always remain. And what the shared trauma does, it shatters this asymmetrical balance or relationship. And it can, if we don't, if we're not aware of it and we don't discuss it, it can hurt, disrupt the therapy. But Boulanger says something very, very unique. She says that in these very interludes of where the connection becomes, where the asymmetry is shattered, there's a connection of two humans. There's a human connection, and in that very point, there's a place of freedom for both sides to shift into something new. So it could also work to support therapy. And there's another thing that I would like to say to add to Ronen's words about a sense of meaning and sense of efficacy. And many therapists use the term vest. It's like a protective vest, our profession. It also, another gift that we are granted working with really deep traumas is that only in these places we can truly see the greatness of the human spirit. The human spirit is really a wonder. And I think we can see it in the Israeli society. But only diving deep down there and sensing and feeling everything that you say, I couldn't bear it, you would be granted a gift of seeing these immense spirits. And last thing, I want to say that December, January in Natal, we released a research for therapists, and we thought that they would be traumatized. We thought that we would see symptoms, frequent and high-level symptoms among therapists, because, as you said, therapists were exposed. And I'm taking you back to the first weeks when hearing all the events was for the first time. Now something has happened. we're kind of numb but in those few weeks, we thought we would see high levels of traumatization among therapists. We didn't find it. We didn't find high levels. Therapists were extremely resilient, and we have about 300 therapists in our research from all places, all around Israel, in hotels, down south, and etc. And they did say exactly what Ronen said, that they gain meaning and a sense of efficacy and a place to contribute to people, to society. We all want to enlist and do something. So soldiers do it. But for us in the civil arena, we are enlisted to do something for the civil arena. And that gave therapists a lot of strength. We are having a second round these days, and I don't know what we'll see. Maybe the burnout will come out now. But I do think, I sense myself in what Ronen is saying, that there's a gift for us being in the mental health profession.
Very, very important. The issue of feeling meaning is in the center of the belief system. It's in the center of the resilience. And I think probably also doctors and policemen and of course the soldiers in the army, the sense of meaning is very, very, it's like a key factor in resilience.
All our resilience programs, especially with first responders, police forces, etc., we work on the meaning.
And I want to go back to what you asked, Tamar, about the place of nature. I think nature, in a way, contains in a natural and a way we can relate also a lot of our taboo and very catastrophic way of thinking. Like when we go to nature, we meet death, we meet sunset. Yeah, we meet earthquakes. Yeah, we meet catastrophes, which when we look at it in nature, they can look more normal. Yes. So when we can work on these issues side by side to sunrise, to sunset, and knowing that tomorrow there will be a sunrise, knowing that after the low tide, there will come high tide. So after now we have a lot of a lot of fire in the north. Yes, we know that the summer will end and autumn will come and rain will come, and we know that these trees will flourish. So when we want to connect people to hope, and hope is something so important in recovering, working with nature and just connecting to these very basic, fundamental things which happen in nature on a very day by day, year by year like cycle, we connect to hope. I will talk a bit about art. When we are facing an empty page, empty paper, yes, and I have like a panda, I have some paints with me, and the page is empty, and I need to pick up a color and fill up the page, and I managed to fill up the emptiness with a choice I did. So making a decision, making a choice, moving from being passive to being active, choosing the specific color which represents my specific feeling, drawing a specific image which relates to hope. So all of these things, yeah, and also I can take the page and I can just tear it apart and I can put it in the garbage. I can get rid of things and I can create from this thing, I create something new. I can create a ball and now I can play with the ball. So using art has this element of distancing. I'm moving from the concrete reality to the symbolic reality. I have control. I can use materials. I can connect to my strength. If we create together, we connect to group strengths. We have all these abilities to connect through the art making to imagination. Imagination, as we said before, is the ability to create a different, alternative, and better reality. And this is why in Ono now, the program I talked about, developing a resilience through art and play, is so crucial. The place of art, the place of play, is so crucial in healing from trauma and stress because it links to the imagination and the body and the emotions, and it creates, basically, it builds up all of the basic pH, all of the coping mechanisms, and it helps us deal with stress.
Ronen, I think what you're saying may bring us back to one of your first questions, Tamal, and I don't know if they were answered, but trauma takes the symbolic level away. It takes playfulness and it takes creativity. as you mentioned, Tamar, our minds are captive to the sense of survival, and then there's the the flight, fight, and also, if you would like to, the freeze. And in these places, there is no creativity. Everything is very, very concrete. So perhaps, Ronen, what you have just said, it actually provides the answer as to what we should do. I also think that what we see today, and the trauma that we see today, that each traumatic event creates a somewhat different and unique display of the trauma. The phenomenology is a little bit different. That's why the diagnosis for trauma actually is very, very wide. So it could capture any traumatic event. And in this trauma, the specific trauma of October 7th and following months, we see a lot of rage, and we see a lot of anger, and we see a lot of violence. And I think some of it is because there is nowhere to channel them.
To channel them.
Right. And then what art therapy would do, or in inserting the creativeness into the group or the individual, would be a possible thing to do. I think that the creativity was actually seen in all the acts, the civil acts that were done, thinking about
demonstrations. Yes, a lot. We see a lot of art.
You see a lot of art in the demonstration, but also just thinking about what we should do. We should now have carpools for people who were evacuated from the south because they need things from their homes. I think the response was very, very creative. And when there is a channel to let out the distress, it won't come out in violence. But when, and speaking about ongoing stress, it's not just the ongoing stress, the ongoing threat, it's also the ongoing sense of hopelessness and helplessness, and the ongoing sense of betrayal that it continues. And once these end, and once there's a greater sense of efficacy, social efficacy, communal efficacy, then we could begin to see the change. And speaking about, you said, Ronen, that there are not a lot of works about how to respond to communal trauma. One of the basic works that are done does speak about 5 essential elements that we need for society. And 2 of them we've discussed here largely. One is the sense of a social efficacy, and the other is a sense of hope. With ongoing continuous trauma, the sense of hope is eroded. Yeah, right. It's burned out when there's.
Yeah, we're in a really complex. Also, because what's happening in socially in Israel, and the things which were prior to the war, with the מהפכה המשפטית and what's happening in the government, I think
judicial reform.
It's a big question of faith. Who can we trust? How can we trust? And this question relates to what Tamar said about hope. So it is a very complex time. And I think also it's why so many new approaches, theories, programs are being developed. It's really important. I would just say that we just published, we have, as I said before, I wrote 4 protocol books in the last 5 months. All of them are free. You can find all of them in Mashabim website. It's 4 of them was written for therapists and educators, just to give tools how to use art, play in group work with children, with youth, with adults, with elderly people. Just do it. Last week, we published in Mashabim a book called Hayar HaMerapeh, which is the accompanying book of one of the programs in the for young children. It's for free. Parents, please go into Mashabim website. Download the book. It's a story for children. In the beginning of the book, there are this kind of introduction, how you can use the book, how you can use play and art in your homes, in your kindergarten, to help people process and express their feelings through the metaphoric story of a forest and animals. It's for free. You can download it in Mashabim website. Use it. And there are so many wonderful innovatives now. People are offering, as Tamar said, so many creativity, and like people just donate. their time, their creativity, their abilities. It's part of a community. We're a very strong nation. It has so many.
One of the things that is a healing process is that when community and the nation take responsibility for those who were injured, physically, psychologically, or both, and the programs that are provided for the veterans coming back from a war. We have one initiative like that in Natal, providing 12 sessions free of charge for Reserve Army veteran personnel coming back from a war. It's both a preventative conception and also the understanding that if we as a society will take responsibility on the consequences of the trauma that we have experienced, the process of healing could begin. If we don't take responsibility, then the trust will not linbot, will not grow.
It won't evaporate.
Yeah, it won't evaporate, and the sense of betrayal would remain. So I think initiatives like this from Natal, from the state, the fact that society has these NGOs like Mashabim and Natal, it's a healing it's a healing presence within the society. When you know that you're living in a building where there's a doctor, you feel a little bit more safe, right? You know that if something happens, God forbid, you can knock on that door in the middle of the night. When a society knows to provide the needs of individuals who are hurt, it's a better society, it's a healing society, and it's therapeutic for the society. And I think this is what our NGOs do.
Amazing. Thank you both so much for the work that you do,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Ronen Berger and Dr. Tamar Lavie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.